Back on Sold Out Sports Talk on AFR Talk. Roman Gabriel III, your host. And, of course, you can join us at 8 Eastern nationwide on American Family Radio and on the net streaming at afr.net. We're glad you're here. Our guest tonight, I really like this guy. I've read about him, haven't known a whole lot about him, know about his pitching career, but what he's doing as a Christian man and with his family and the difference he's making for the Lord is very exciting. Of course, he's a World Series champion of the San Fransicso Giants, a great pitcher, but more importantly, he has an organization called Generation Alive. He has an opportunity to reach out with faith to inspire young kids to right social injustices, poverty, and hunger, and he's very involved in the San Fransicso community with some of his teammates as well. Our guest, Jeremy Affeldt, World Series champion pitcher, San Fransicso Giants. Jeremy, how you doing?
Doing great. You?
Oh, I'm telling you, I'm blessed, man. It's great to have you in.
Yeah. Thank you. No, it's good to be on.
First of all, let's talk about an opportunity that you had. This. Whenever I read information about you, you talk about using your Christian faith as a platform. And one of the things that we do here at Sold Out is we talk to high-impact athletes and coaches who get it on and off the field. And one of the things that I've seen here is some of the exciting things that you're doing and using this World Series platform and this career that you've had as an excellent starter. You've been a closer. You've been a setup guy now. Talk about your faith and about the things that you're doing with this organization for kids.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I think it was a couple of years ago, we started this organization in 2005. Initially, I think the vision and the mission statement was a discipleship scenario where I wanted to get into schools. It didn't matter if it was public school or private school, and talk about character development, leadership skills, and just developing young people and young minds in a correct way and giving them the ability and the skills and the thoughts to think positive for one, but also to understand why they are here and why they have a destiny. And then we would do an outreach. We'd invite them to a free outreach, and then the youth pastors would be involved, and we'd do the gospel message, and then we would try to get the youth pastors to understand where kids are at and try to get them into the youth groups to disciple them in their schools. And it was a good idea, just I don't think it ended up working the way I thought it was going to work. And I sat down a couple of years ago when I signed with San Fransicso, and I said, God, I don't understand what you want me to do with Generation Alive. What do you? Because I have a passion for young people. I think they're impressionable, but I think that I think even on top of that, this generation, the Generation Y, is just an awesome group of young people, and to empower them in some way to understand that they have a tremendous ability right now to make a difference in the world, because we have more young people in the world than we've ever had, I think, ever. And so for us to be able to influence them correctly is something I have a passion for, and using sports, obviously, in some of my success to gain that platform. I don't think I'd be able to speak into on certain platforms if I wasn't an athlete. And so I just, I've been wanting to use some of these things. And I told a group of young people yesterday, I said, I've done a lot of good things in my career. I've pitched in the big leagues for 9 years. I've failed. I've succeeded. I've been a part of 2 World Series. I've won one. I've lost one. I've been set up man of the year in 2009. I've done a lot of good things, and it all means absolutely nothing if I don't do what I'm supposed to do with those things. And I don't think sitting at home and telling my kids and my wife, look at me, look how good I am, and all the public to say, oh, please just ask for my autograph and just cheer for me whenever I walk by. And if that's all I'm here for, that is such a shallow life. And as an athlete, I want to do a lot more with what I've been given.
Jeremy Affeldt, San Fransicso Giants World Series pitcher, is our guest on AFR Talk, Sold Out Sports Talk. And I think one of the things that interested me most about your organization, Jeremy, and what we do here at Sold Out is using the passion of sports to not only help young people, but help their parents in a time that communication is so important in the world that these kids live in. We have so many distractions for families today. The family's under attack. And when you look at the platform that you have and that other athletes and coaches have, you talked about accountability and the responsibility to use your gifts that God's given you. You were in the league for a long time, as you said, and a lot of people think that your success just comes overnight. But as I have looked at your career, this was a long deal. I mean, you came into the league with the Royals in the third round, spent 4 years in the minors. What is it about that part of your career to get to the point where you had a World Series opportunities with Colorado and then you won against Texas? Talk about that process and about what you learned during that.
Yeah, it was an awesome spiritual journey in Kansas City. What's funny, I was never hurt before I got to the big leagues, and so to get to the big leagues and to be, I was aggressive. I was a power pitcher. I was going to be a starter. I had all these big, I could see it. I could be one of the top starters in the game. I was a left-handed pitcher with a power arm. I mean, there's just so much of an upside. And to then all of a sudden have these weird injuries with a fingernail issue where they had to remove a quarter of my fingernail, which kept giving me blisters that were not put me on the DL. And then I had no oblique tear, and then I tore my groin tendon off my bone. And seeing all these things take place, and now that I look back, I'm very thankful for it. But, I mean, God, He takes us on a journey. And everybody says, read Job when you're going through a bad time, right? Like, he had it the worst for anybody. And, I had a person hand me a book, and it was about the book of Job. And I looked at him, and I said, look, I know that he had it worse than everybody else. But relative to my situation, I am, grieving here. I can't get my career going because I'm getting hurt, and it's weird injuries. And it's never been my arm. And I look back on that, and it's almost like a very thankful thing where God was wanting to show me some things through pain and failure and weird stuff at the time, but my arm was always protected, and that has always been the thing. If you can keep your arm healthy, you'll be fine. And I was having just these weird injuries, and then I was having bad years. I was high ERAs, and it was just a time for me where I could literally, I remember just grabbing a hold of the face of God and literally saying, screaming and being frustrated and being like David, where he just said, why? Don't forget about me down here. I feel like you've forgotten about me. But within the same psalm that David would say that, he'd end it with, our God is so faithful. And so for me, that's what took place. It was a time where I went through a lot of pain and I went through a lot of frustration, but I learned so much about staying so close to the King because I realized that in my pain and in my frustrations, that's when my heart was truly open, because that is where you expose everything in your being. You actually say, I'm mad about this. I'm frustrated about this. God, you've given me this unbelievable talent, and I don't feel like I can use it the best way I know how because I'm always hurt. And he was able to just pour love on me. And I think when you have nothing but success all of the time, and if you expect to never have any pain, and you're always going good, you tend to want to be like, yeah, God's there, but you know what? I don't need him right now. I'm doing well. And I think he knew the successes that he was going to give me down the road. Obviously, I didn't, but he knew of the World Series and being set man of the year and having, I've actually had, 4 years of pretty good success now in a row. And he knew that. And I think it was but because of what I went through early in my pain and in my frustration of sports, of not succeeding the way I wanted to succeed, and how he showed me how much he loves me during that time, it's kept me on track to where even in my success now, I'm very humbled by my success. I don't believe I have a big head about it. I'm very confident in who I am, but I believe that I'm very humbled to even be a part of a World Series, let alone two. I'm even more humbled to be able to say I'm a world champion and a World Series winner. And I just want to use these talents and these successes to be able to promote the kingdom of God the best way I know how. And the love of Jesus seems to be absent sometimes in the gospel message. We want to do this whole gospel thing of, Jesus died on the cross for our sins and all this stuff, but we get into this so focused on numbers, like how many people can I get saved in this one event? What are the numbers on how many people actually check the yes mark on salvation? But then you leave and there's no discipleship. There's no real tangible, okay, now that I've said this prayer, what does that mean? And so I'm really wanting to say, you know what, God is a God of love, and I guarantee if we show what the God of love is like, people will want to be with him. People will want to serve him if we actually get them to understand what the love of Jesus is. And that's why, I've used my success and my talents to fight injustice. And
Jeremy Affeldt, San Francisco Giants pitcher, is our guest on AFR Talk, Sold Out Sports Talk. And Jeremy, where can they go to find out more about Generation Alive and to find your blog?
You actually can find my blog on the Generation Alive website, generationalive.org. Where Generation Alive is on Facebook, they're on Twitter, I'm actually on Twitter as well, and I do a lot of positive quotes throughout the day. If I'm thinking of stuff, I try to encourage people, or I send articles that I think are good for people to read on my Twitter. And then my blog is on generationalive.org. You can it'll say Jeremy's blog on it, but also you can go to it's jeremyaffeldt.wordpress.com, and then and I'm on the WordPress blog. You can go there and read them. I give my thoughts, I give my views of sports and Christianity.
Wanted to ask you about a gentleman that you had an opportunity to see up close and personal in the World Series. Of course, you played a great Texas Rangers team and were able to win the World Series. Josh Hamilton, what an incredible comeback story, a guy who loves the Lord, a guy who lives that life. Tell me a little bit about what you know about Josh and what makes him special.
Well, you know what? We have the same agent. And so I talk to, I don't get to talk to Josh a whole lot based on we're in totally different leagues. But, I talked to my agent, Mike Moy, quite a bit about him. And I just say, hey, I'm curious to know how he's doing. I know he's having this bout with pneumonia right now, and I've been praying for him. And he's had a lot of interesting scenarios take place in his life. And I think there's been a lot of attacks on his body and a lot of attacks against his soul that he's been able to weigh through and to persevere. And God's really, brought him to new levels. I think he's always been a talent that everybody knew was there. Even when he hit his struggles where he had to leave the game, everybody said, man, this guy, if he doesn't ever come back, he could have been one of the greatest players ever. And you never knew it until he came back. And he came back, and you just see what he can do on the baseball field and his talent and how he's now, same type of thing. He went through a lot of pain and perplexity, and I think that him finding God and just weighing through those things, God's really promoted him. I think he has an awesome platform to speak to people who have gone through those things. I don't personally have an addictive personality, and I haven't been through that kind of situation, but there are a lot of guys in the game that do have addictive personalities, and there are a lot of guys in the game that do go through some of the situations or types of situations that he's been able to go through. So his voice is going to be tremendous in those people's lives, and I think he's a very honest individual. I think he's not, embarrassed by what he did. I think he's more just open to saying, look, I made a mistake, and God is a God of grace and forgiveness, and he's done it for me. He can do it for you, and I think that's what makes him special.
Jeremy, I tell you what, it's been a real pleasure having you on, and I wish you nothing but the best coming this year. But more importantly, we're going to be praying for Generation Alive. Jeremy, have a good one, buddy, and look forward to visiting with you soon. And
great. All right, man.
Jeremy Affeldt, Giants World Series pitcher and champion. And when we come back, we'll finish it off on Sold Out Sports Talk on AFR Talk.